Now, colleagues, members, I think the good order of the House would be well served if members would just actually try to follow the procedures correctly. The Honourable Chris Carter.
Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Education. What representations did the Minister make to her Cabinet colleagues in the light of her commitment that teachers would not be included in the provisions of the Employment Relations Amendment Bill?
Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
As the member should know, Cabinet discussions are confidential.
Order. Order. Honourable Chris Carter.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister should have made representations to her colleagues because she wrote in Mr. Speaker,
Order. The honourable member should be asking a question, not making a statement. Could I ask the member to do that, please? The Honourable Chris Carter.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask the Minister. I'd like to ask the Minister.
Order.
Mr. Speaker.
Order.
Mr. Speaker.
Order. Order. The honourable member knows that when the Speaker is on his or her feet, that the member will be silent. Members, I think a little latitude is appropriate when members are all in new roles here. If we could ask the Honourable Chris Carter to please ask a question. Point of order, Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr. Speaker, the proceedings of the House these days are televised, so everyone will have seen that prior to your standing on your feet, the Honourable Chris Carter sat down. Now, apropos a certain ruling early last week, I think he would have to rule that he had given up his opportunity to take this matter any further.
If the member would just resume his seat for a moment, because he has made a point of order. Member.
I was going to seek leave for the members to be able to ask this question, Mr. Speaker.
There is no such provision for the member. I think the Honourable Chris Carter, because he thought I was going to stand because there was disorder, sat down, and I'll call on the Honourable Chris Carter to please ask a question.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask the Minister why she wrote in the October edition of the NZDI's magazine Ruru.
Point of order, the Honourable Rodney Hyde.
Well, first of all, I think Mr Jerry Brownlee should run a seminar for the Labor front bench on asking questions. But once again, the former minister failed to ask a question. Saying I would like to do something is not a question.
Technically, the honourable member is correct, so could I call on the Honourable Chris Carter, please, for the good order of the House, to take it seriously, actually, and ask a question.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, why did she write in the October edition of NZDI's magazine Ruru, and I quote, "We do not expect a trial period to be included in the collective agreement on which the majority of teacher and support staff employment relations are based."
Honourable.
The member might,
the Honourable Anne Tolley.
Mr. Speaker, the member might like to look at the September edition of NZDI's Roro magazine, where the union themselves show that they well understood our policy did not exempt teachers when they said, quote, "If new employees take up an individual employment agreement, they would presumably be subject to the 90-day probation period," end of quote. This, of course, would still only apply if the individual employee agreed to the trial period.
Alan Peachy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Has the Minister of Education had any reports on whether the new probationary period will be a compulsory element of any employment agreement with teachers?
Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Anne Tolley.
I have seen some hysterical comments as part of a campaign of misinformation by the Labor Party, which suggests that the 90-day trial periods are compulsory for all teachers. These comments are wrong. First of all, trial periods will only apply to schools with fewer than 20 staff. And secondly, despite the Labor Party's comments, a 90-day trial period can only be included in a contract by agreement between employee and employer.
Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Chris Carter.
Mr. Speaker, why did she tell an NZDI political forum in Rotorua on the 22nd of August 2008 that the 90-day period should not apply to teachers, and why did she make that claim?
Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Anne Tolley.
I made the statement that the member cites on the 22nd of August. After I made that statement, I had communications with education sector groups in September and October, and I made it clear to them that there would be no legislative exemption for teachers and other staff. And in fact, that's what was published by the NZDI themselves in their Roro magazine.
Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Chris Carter.
Mr. Speaker, if that answer is correct, why did she tell an NZDI political panel at Epsom Girls Grammar School in Auckland on the 20th of October that the 90-day rule would not apply to support staff in schools? And what do such clearly misleading statements do now for her credibility as Education Minister?
Order. Members, the issue of what ministers can be asked has already arisen, and the Honourable David Cunliffe pointed out his question related to a statement the relevant minister had made subsequent to the election. It seems to me the quote that the minister is asking the honourable member is asking the minister to confirm there's a statement made prior to the election, and as minister, she is not responsible as minister for that. I invite the member to reword his supplementary, see if he can bring it within standing orders. Point of order, the Honourable Dr. Michael
Mr.
Cullen.
Speaker. So what you're saying to the House is that a minister may do the exact opposite of what they pledged to the country before the election, and in no sense are accountable to Parliament for that.
Order. The standing orders are very clear on the matter that the ministers are a separate person from other persons such as leaders of political parties, members of political parties, and in this chamber, ministers, including the Prime Minister, can only be questioned on their actions and plans as ministers and Prime Minister, not on any role they may have as political persons, leaders of parties. That's a long-standing there are many Speaker's rulings that cover that issue, and I'm sure the honourable member is well aware of that. And in fact, I'm aware that the matter has been discussed with the Labor Party only this morning in relation to questions being lodged today, that the way questions are to be handled with respect to confirming statements made prior to the election has to be handled carefully. I invite the Minister to ask a supplementary to bring it inside standing orders. Point of order, the Honourable Dr.
Mr. Speaker, it would be in order for us to ask Mrs. Tolley, has she seen a statement made on a certain date? Because you may have seen that since the election became a minister. Can she confirm that she made it, but in fact it does not represent her views?
Speaking the point of order, the Honourable Rodney Hyde.
Of course, Dr. Cullen is quite right, but it would be helpful if he gave his advice to the front bench of the Labor caucus actually outside this chamber, rather than having to come down and rescue Chris Carter and so embarrass him.
Order. I've heard sufficient on this matter, honourable members. The point that Dr.